Hello and welcome. Today we will be talking about Chapter 9, which is on lifespan development, which is also called developmental psychology. Okay, so again, as usual, let me go through the slides here and I will point out key ones that you'll need to pay attention to in terms of the quiz and some assignments. And if you have any questions, please let me know via email, let me know via remind, or we can set up a Zoom appointment and we can talk through it to go forward. Okay. So lifespan development is kind of another word for developmental psychology. It really talks about really from the moment of conception to the moment of death. It really is the entire lifespan of a human being. Okay, so that's really what it talks about. There are more emphasis probably in probably the first 20 years than there are later, because so much of the development is occurring and so much of the foundation's laid down. But that's pretty much what we cover in this. Okay, so this chapter is kind of a brief introduction to it. We do have another class that I teach called Developmental Psychology 241. That really is the whole semester dealing with this topic. Okay, so basically there's three types of development we'll deal with. Physical, which is how their brain gets developed and then how we grow and different things like that. And then there are cognitive development, which is how our brain works, attention, memory, language, things we've already talked about a little bit already. Then psychosocial development, which is how our emotions get developed. Again, all of these are tied into nature-nurture aspects. But as you can see, social relationships, things like that, personality are all part of the psychosocial. Okay. Also can be referred to as some of the sociological aspects that occur as well. Let's talk about norms for a second. There is no normal in psychology. There is no normal person. What norms are where they go back and they take data from the past and they determine usually ranges that are acceptable. For example, walking. Most children, the norm, not normal, the norm is somewhere 18 months to maybe 32 months. Babies can walk as early as less than a year. They can walk maybe as late as after maybe 2.5, 3 years old. A lot of it depends on their motor development. A lot of it depends on what their lifestyle is about. If they don't have to go for anything, then they tend to kind of be lazy like the rest of us. They won't move. If they have to move around to get things like their bottle or toys or whatever, then they'll tend to find a way to move. So anyway, those are some of the things that would be the nurture part of it. The nature part certainly has to do with motor development and some of those kind of aspects as well. So that's the normative approach, which means there's kind of a range. It isn't like if you're not walking by your 19th month, if there's something wrong with the baby. That's certainly not the case. There's a wide range of when things occur. There's the critical period like Jeannie. It doesn't occur like by your second birthday. You learn how to make sentences. It's a process that occurs over time based on nature and nurture. Okay, so anyway, we will move forward with that in mind. So there's two kinds of things here, and we'll talk about them as we get into Freud and Piaget and Erikson, things like that. There's continuous development, which means that it grows at a pretty steady rate the whole time, not really changing too much. Okay, and then they're discontinuous, which are these jumps. There certainly are certain aspects that go discontinuous. Okay, and they all of a sudden you get to some point, and then something happens and they take this big jump up to here. Okay, continuous development might be, we kind of tend to grow. We do have some growth spurts, but we kind of tend to do this until we get to a point where we're at our maximum, and we don't continue to grow from that after that usually. In fact, sometimes we end up dropping our height, not a whole lot, but because there's some compression in our spine and things like that. So these are the two kinds, continuous and discontinuous, we'll go through as well. There are many courses of development, and so we can talk about this for a little bit, but we'll talk about it quite a bit later. So this is this is a group of, there are two girls, I think, that are playing with inner tubes and going to the beach. Okay. Two little boys throwing rocks. What do little boys do? They throw rocks, get sticks, things like that. Girls will do a lot of social stuff and usually go out and do that. Those are kind of maybe stereotypical things, I would say. Maybe even you might even want to consider them microaggressions, because certainly girls will throw rocks and gather sticks, and boys certainly will play with inner tubes. But in development, especially as we're moved to things from the sociological or cultural aspect, we tend to move that way. But it also goes in many different areas. So you go down to in Africa, as I told you before, I spent some time in Africa. Boys and girls kind of develop very much the same. They have the same tools and the same things they like. Girls love sports, boys love sports, but boys play what they call football, soccer. Girls play what they call netball, which is a form of basketball, but you don't dribble and you just shoot to the net. Pass, 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 shoot. Okay, which is probably a drill many of you've done if you play basketball. You move the ball up the court without the ball hitting the ground. Ball hits the ground, it's a turnover, and it goes back the other way. It's kind of fun watching them play that a lot of times, and they really get excited about it. Anyway, so there's people in different areas get involved in different ways of development. Okay, the nature nurture thing will always be part of the conversations. Siblings are very different. I've got two grandkids. One of them is very much into sports, and the other one is very much into Minecraft and creative. He loves to write stories, and the other one so much. So same house, pretty much maybe a lot of the same DNA, and kind of the same nurturing aspects, but they develop differently, and that's a really good thing. That's a good thing to occur, that we have all the different people in the world, that we need all the differences going on, which is kind of contrary to our society right now, where we're so divided and everybody wants to be like one. We need all the different variations and opinions so we can have discussions. So anyway, there's nature nurture, and so those were always part of every psychological discussion. So Freud has this concept of psychosexual. This is really internal things that are going on, and it really is about it's very discontinuous, which means that someone stays in the oral stage to all of a sudden something happens and they jump to the anal stage. It isn't a gradual progression all the way through here. What it is where their pleasure seeking occurs. Oral stage means in their mouth. So this is when children are very young. And as most of you know, if you've managed to children at all, very little, you give them something, the first thing it does goes right in their mouth. Okay. Even with, we have this little puppy, even with little puppies, everything goes in their mouth. They want to mouth things. So there's some crossover there. So these are the different aspects of it. And I think I gave you an acronym for this. Hopefully I did. And this is OAPLG. Orangutans always play with little gorillas. Okay, that sounds kind of silly, but somebody came up with that a couple of years ago, and that helps me remember which way they go. Certainly these will be part of a quiz, and you'll be able to tell them in order. Anal, just real quick, that has to do with, that's the potty training years. That's when little children, many times, they'll get mad if you flush the toilet after they've pooped in the toilet. They want to turn around and see them, because what came out of them was them. And they have a great feeling. And also it many times, as we know, without getting too explicit here, that when we have a nice bowel movement, we feel better. And so there's some pleasure-seeking thing to occur there. We have achy stomach, and we go to the bathroom, and it goes away. Phallic, this is when a lot of little boys kind of play with themselves, and they kind of realize that boys and girls realize they're different. Okay, kind of early elementary school to kind of later elementary school. Latency is middle schoolish. That's when the idea of the phallic stuff has kind of gone away, because what really happens here is that idea that boys and girls are different, and so they kind of go to separate areas. You go to a middle school dance or something, and it's boys on one side, girls on the other. Many times. And so that's where they kind of lose interest in some of the other gender, and they kind of focus on themselves, their world, their development, their sports, their games, their dance, their stuff. Genital is when we get into more intimate relationships, and that really is involved like with early high school through probably maybe 20. And usually by 20, if someone hasn't gone through the genital stage, they usually really have trouble making relationships, creating relationships. Okay, so this is psychosexual, discontinuous. It's about pleasure seeking, 5 stages of development. Okay, Freud. Here's Erickson. Erickson has one that is, he worked with Freud. He had something based on the ego identity. It's 8 stages. The stages are here. We won't go through all of them, but you can see in this, these are the years. Okay. Difference in Freud, big difference, is that Freud usually his end around 20. After that, he thinks you're pretty much formed. Erickson goes all the way through death. Okay, so he goes all the way through. Some of these are kind of the same in here. But you can see they're a little bit different. So most of people that are taking college courses are kind of in one of these 2 areas. Identity confusion, which is the high school years, is where do I fit in? Who are my friends? What kind of friends do I like? Maybe it's not so much conscious, but if you look back through your high school years, that's a lot of what you were doing. Who do I sit with in class? Who do I hang out with at lunch? Where's the right lunch table? Who do I go with at lunch or class or after school? What teams do I join based on friends I have? Then after high school or late high school, you get into this intimacy versus isolation. Do you create relationship? An intimate relationship is not necessarily a sexual relationship. An intimate relationship can be just a good relationship with a same gender. You can have a guy can have a friend that it would be called intimate relationship if they've just been maybe friends since they were 2, and they're just really great friends, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. It doesn't necessarily mean there's a sexual aspect to it. So oral isolation, someone who rebels connecting, and those maybe go back to some of the Freudian issues. And so these others in here too, and that people go to there. So you might want to take a look at those. And this is one of those slides I'd probably have available to review. Okay. So here's Piaget, and he goes into his concepts as well, which we'll go through those in a minute. He believed that pretty much by the time you get to kind of late 20s, you're pretty much settled. Okay. He believed in schemas or schematas, which are people fit themselves into categories based on their cognitive growth and where they fit, they think they belong. So you tie these together. None of these work independently, but you start tying them together, and you can kind of see why someone who is 16 years old in high school may really struggle with day-to-day activities because all of this is going on in their brains. Okay. Sometimes we as adults forget about that. So here is his stages. You can watch some videos that are on there about some of these where if you watch one of them, if you can play peekaboo with little babies, they think it's because when they can't see you, you're not there. This idea of object permanence, okay, occurs. Then there is this idea of pretend play, which occurs at pre-operational, which means that they can have little tea parties. This is one tea parties or trucks, or and of course girls now are playing trucks, and boys are taking part in what would be called tea parties. Okay, so it might be called something a little bit different, but that's kind of what they are. But it's pretend play. It's to be able to create friends, to be able to create an environment, a stage, a story, and be able to act that. Up until here, their play is pretty much based on a thing. Okay, concrete operational. This is more when start developing kind of mathematical issues. But this is when 2 plus 2 equals 4 makes a lot of sense here. Now it's a second grade. Okay, before 2 plus 2 equals 4 is like, what is a 4? Okay, now again, these are all somewhat soft. Okay, so it's not exactly those years. Okay, but and then formal operational is when we get into abstract logic. So this is one of my comments I've always made is we've been trying to push people into this composite math, or I'm not sure what they call it now all the time, but it's math 1, math 2, math 3. We used to call it algebra. But algebraic instruction really requires, at a higher level, requires some abstract logic. Okay, so formal operational aspects don't really occur until sixth, seventh grade. Okay, until someone's ready for it, and sometimes even later. Many times there are students in high school that all of a sudden this makes sense to them, and they start really going forward in math. So anyway, this is Piaget's cognitive development, brain development. You see all of these are brain related. Okay, they're not pleasure related, not psychosocial related, they're brain related. Okay. Then we have Kohlberg. Kohlberg, we haven't talked about Kohlberg much, but Kohlberg there's some videos and stuff in there about Kohlberg, and I want to take a look at him. He's really an interesting idea of moral development. These are his three levels. Okay, his three levels have to do, and these aren't age-driven necessarily, and they're not even consistent. You can go from stage 1 to stage 4 to stage 3 to stage 2, depending on the situation. Okay, they're just more labels of why you made the decision you made, not what the decision is, but why you made it. So stage 1, and this is really younger children usually, but not always. Obedience and punishment. So if you're going to get punished, you don't do it. Okay, or if you're going to punish if you don't do it, you're going to do it. Okay, it's all about obedience and punishment. Okay, now there are some adults that still sit in this stage. Okay, and it doesn't mean good or bad. It just means this is where they are. Okay, so this group here would have struggles with this group right here. Okay, and this is why we have some conflicts in our society, because we have people at all these different stages, and they just don't understand. The brain doesn't work in the same way as the other people do. And again, not good or bad, not right or wrong. Higher number doesn't mean better necessarily. Usually they're age dependent. Usually these things we go through are age wise, but we can be 5 today and we can be a 2 tomorrow, depending on where we are in our world. A trauma can occur and take us back to 1. Okay, so anyway, so they're from obedience, strictly obedience. Most of us sit in this stage 3 or 4. Interpersonal behavior, social approval. So this is a lot of not only local from our peer group, but also from our society. Society wants me to kind of do this. It wants me to drive the normal speed on the freeway, on the highway, the posted speed. If you drive above that or below that, you kind of can run into the social approval process. And so a lot of people will just drive the speed limit because of that, not because of laws or because they're going to get punished, but because that's what the expectation is. This is more delivered on obeying authority and forming the social order. Again, kind of the same thing, okay? This is a little bit more about authority. This is in social contract. So when I do something in this world, there's a contract. We have social contract. This could be when you start dealing with different social aspects. Do we have a social contract to take care of our fellow human beings? Or is our social contract that it's I take care of mine and hopefully there's something for you? Okay, those are all part of these. There is an assignment. Let me see if I have them coming up. No, okay. Kohlberg, there's something called the dilemmas that he calls. He has a dilemma that is in our assignments, and you read the dilemma. It's about a man. His wife is deathly sick. He needs a medication to save her. Okay, think of COVID right now, maybe, but it's a little different than that. And what he does is he has a decision. The pharmacist has the medication, is selling it for $2,000, okay, or $1,000, depending on the story you read. But it's kind of a dilemma, but a lot of money, a lot more than he has. And so and he can't borrow the money, and the pharmacist isn't going to give it to him for less than that. So he's got to make a decision. Does he break into the pharmacist's place, and steal the drug, or does he kind of wait and watch and hope his wife gets well without that? Or maybe there's some other way down the road that he's going to get the medication. So the question here is not whether it's right or wrong to break into the thing. Some of you can make that decision here. The question is, why do you make the decision you make? Okay. And so what you're going to do with the assignment is you're going to make your decision, write a little bit about it, short, maybe a paragraph or two, something like that. And then what's more important is which of these stages did you use to make that decision? Okay, which of those stages? And that's what's interesting. Okay, So that's one of our assignments. So this is a slide you may want to keep for that assignment. So prenatal development, we're going to go a lot into this. Most of you have had biology and mitosis, cell division, so on and so forth. This is the sperm coming into the egg. These are early, first and second weeks. We go third through eighth, and you can kind of start seeing the development here. Where here they look like a little alien being. It's probably disrespectful to say that, but they kind of look. Their head is so big. And the head goes first because it needs all of the brain development to be able to control the growth of the rest of the body. And as you can see, the head starts slowing down growth and the body continues to grow. Okay, so the brain develops and takes care of a lot of the rest of the stuff. And you can kind of see the basic development there. Now we spend a chapter or two on this in developmental psychology, but this is kind of the basic thing. It takes us through 40 weeks. Okay, at 40 weeks, the baby, it is completely developed. That's about when birth takes place, but somewhere around this 28 to 32 weeks, these are the preemies that get born that can actually survive and move forward. Earlier than this, probably not. Okay, and so that's just a basic slide there. Different influences: alcohol, smoking, drugs. What's interesting now is recently, since marijuana has become such a popular legal drug in many states, and even more so dealing with amounts or growing or things like that, that's become on this list as well. Now, you might consider that a drug. You might consider this is more terms of heroin, cocaine, and stuff like that. That you have certainly people at different times back in the 60s, you would probably put marijuana in here, but today, probably not. Okay, so these are things that can change the baby in their development. Especially if you drink alcohol during a time when the brain's being developed, it'll affect the brain. If you use smoking heavily when the child's having their spinal cord created, it'll affect the spinal cord. So whatever's being developed at the time that you're taking part in these teratogens, they're called, whatever's being developed at that time, that's what these can have an effect on. Okay, so, and this is also not just, let me just say this too, this is not just on the woman, okay? So the woman doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, or doesn't do drugs. But if this is being done all around her, especially secondhand smoke, that's not a good team player, I guess. I would say that better. If the person was generally consumed alcohol fairly regularly, I'm not saying alcoholic, but fairly regularly, and you're drinking all the time around her, that's not right. If you're smoking around her or people doing drugs around her and she's not able to take part in it, so this is a family thing. This is a family. I mean, whoever's there, whether it's a father, whether a partner, or whether it's an older grandparent or something like that, or there that's helping with this. Okay, so this is a lot to do with a group effort. This is not just on the mother. Okay. And these are some of the different things that can happen. This is fetal alcohol syndrome. This has to do with some of the things. You might hear some noise in the background. It's my dog's chasing a ball around the room. He's not very bright. Anyway, bats it and chases it. So these are things that fetal alcohol syndrome can cause. These are some of the looks you can see. Not everybody has a small head. Did not experience fetal alcohol syndrome and so on and so forth. But these are some of the features that can develop, and that a lot of it depends on when the heavy alcohol was drunk. Okay, so but some of these do occur. You don't even see them. Some of these right here. These are things that just don't happen often. So people that have drinking heavily in their families while someone's pregnant in the household, I think are very very selfish, I guess. Because these things can happen. They don't necessarily guarantee they'll happen, but they can happen to a child, and the child has to deal with that the rest of their life, and of course so do you as well. So as the parent, or as a parent, there's infancy, things that are going on, little babies all wrapped up, and first birthday probably kind of stuff going on. This is where we start getting into some of those developmental processes. So there's reflexes. Newborns have reflexes. These are four that you should probably know. Rooting reflex, if you touch their cheek, they'll turn it because they think they're going to be breastfed. Okay. Sucking reflex, if you give them something, they will put it in their mouth. Okay, and they'll suck on it. Grasping, if you touch the palm of their hand will close. Okay, and so these are things that occur that are reflexes. They don't think about them; they're just born with it, and they move forward with that. Okay, some of the sensory things that are going on, and especially vision is develops in time. They kind of have a blurry lack of peripheral vision when they're first born, and it fairly quickly goes, but it has to develop over time. Human voices, generally the mother, because they've heard the mother in the womb. We had that when learning before we were born. If you watch that video, you'll see that what they learn. Anyway, so yeah, there's things they know when they're born. Growth. This is some of the things that go on. There's a blooming period where things grow. There's a pruning period when things actually get eliminated. So you stop using different things as you go through your childhood. The dog scratching his collar. Going through your childhood, and all of a sudden your neurons stop functioning for that and move to something else. And start moving around. You got motor skills, fine motor skills, gross motor skills. So fine motor skills are available to a pincher, which means we can pick something up with our pointer finger and our thumb. Those are fine motor skills. Gross motor skills, kind of larger groups. Legs. Can we move? Can we walk? Can we move our head around? Can we move our arms? Can we pick something up? So those are things that occur as well as we go through it. So cognitive development is something that, and Piaget laid it out fairly well. I'm not going to go too much time in this, but I don't really, this whole truck thing doesn't make any sense to me, so we're not spending time on it, but just know what the guy's name is with the truck thing. Cognitive milestones. Okay, so these are some things that babies learn how to do. They'll say no for the rest of their life. Once mother and father or caretakers start saying no to the baby will start saying no back, and that's kind of embarrassing sometimes. And you can just see some of the different aspects. These are the really key times when things are really growing and happening. This is a little bit slower, okay, but it's still really critical things. Hopefully this why becomes something. I mean, I think learning is about being curious. Learning is about wanting to know why something occurs, not just how it occurred, not just what occurred. More how would be a good question as well, but why. And we lose that. We lose that many times in our younger years because our educational process is so set up on learning facts, and we don't get into the whys as much as maybe we could or should. Anyway, so there's some things that we have. Attention span is somewhat limited until 11. 11, think about this. And if you don't think about the age as compared to grade, just subtract 5 years off of the age. So this is about 6th grade is when attention span grows. Okay, so it just gives you a sense of that. Psychosocial. Okay, so this is Erickson's, right? There's a thing called attachment, and let me see if it's on here, this slide. Yeah, there's Harlow's monkeys. What it talks about is babies have this attachment or bonding that occurs, and that's why many times when the baby's born, the baby is taken, maybe wiped off a little bit, and laid on the mother, right directly on the mother, usually right on their skin. So it creates this instant attachment. It's also so valuable for the father or the primary caretaker. Hopefully the father is there. To be able to have that time as well early on, and by early on I mean the first couple of days, because then the baby attaches to the father as well. And then when the baby goes home, older brothers and sisters that you trust, or even a little younger brother and sister, you can lay them on baby on their lap and kind of hold it with them. The babies get connection. That's called attachment theory, and that's much more important than feeding, much more important than most any other aspect that's there. So Harlow did these experiments with monkeys. Okay, and the experiments, it's fairly quick. As you see, it's very early on. This is early black and white, where the monkeys had two mothers. These mothers were these wired monkeys. One wired monkey was covered in cloth, like a soft cloth. The other one had a nipple for food. It was like a baby bottle nipple. Okay, uh, the monkeys would come out of the cage and they would go to the baby bottle nipple and eat. As soon as they were done, they'd go to the other mother. And anytime something scared them, they would always go to the mother with the soft cloth. And what it showed is they had an attachment to the mother with the soft cloth, and not necessarily they used the other one for food. Okay, they needed it for food, but that wasn't their primary attachment. Okay, so anyways, that's Harlow's monkeys, and there's a little bit quick slide. I think it's like 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, something pretty simple. And Bowlby had his attachment theories. He talked about having a secure base, and this is where the soft monkey gave the baby a secure base. And so there's some tie where they develop some connection where the physical, social, and emotional needs are being taken care of in that environment. When those aren't being taken care of, there's some kind of abuse or things that going on. It does have a major impact on the development of a child and certainly a young adult as well, and even adults when adults are in abusive relationships. So mutual enjoyable interactions. This is why sometimes single moms and single dads who are working 2 or 3 jobs to try and keep bread on the table, so to speak, and rent paid and all that, the chance to do this as much. And this is really important to do. It's hard for me to say when and how someone should do it, but somehow there should be some time set aside for enjoyable interaction. It could even be as easy as coming home and reading a book for 10 or 15 minutes to a child. They really love that time sitting in your lap and reading a book to them. Could be Go Dog Go or something like that. Read like way too many times. Psychosocial, again, this is going into the Erickson world a little bit. And so he talks about different situations that occur. Here's the different attachment and how they bond. So bonding and attachment kind of are the same thing. Bond is the bond they create after the attachment process occurs. Okay, so you can see some of the different aspects of it. These are the styles that children gain, either secure, resistant, avoidant, or disorganized, based on their level of bonding or attachment. Okay, and these early bonding or attachment that occurs, children develop these different aspects. Not again, this is all a spectrum. This isn't an either or. This is what we would call dualistic thinking. This is a spectrum of disorganization, resistance, security, avoidance. Okay, those are a spectrum that occurs, and a child who is bonded and has gone through attachment would have a high level of security, maybe some resistance, probably very little avoidant, and very organized. Okay, so these aren't all or nothing, but they could be somewhere on a spectrum. Okay. Oh, here it explains a little bit better, but those are the 4 different ones that, in general, Ainsworth came up with. And disorganized, as I said, is very common when a child's been abused. They don't feel they've bonded with anybody. There's even research that's coming out, and this may be contrary to some of the thinking that we have, especially in the South here, is that children who are beaten or hit when they are younger for disciplinary reasons tend to move more towards this area right here. Okay, they may feel love, but if the love is someone hitting you, then they tend to move more towards this area. Okay, again, not always, and the sad thing about it is, we'll get into parenting later, but the sad thing about it is most of us as parents, we parent very similar to our parents, or we go to just the opposite. Okay, we don't tend to learn from them and say, oh, that I want to do, that I don't want to do. Again, these aren't absolute. These are kind of just general statements. But children who are hit, and I'm saying excessively, and especially during times of anger, tend to fall in these categories right here. And children that are not hit, and I don't mean laissez-faire, do what you want to do, but I mean boundaries are set, communication occur, children are punished or they understand what they tend to be more in this area here. Okay, so again, just kind of some common issues there. Let's skip one. So these are some of the psychosocial development aspects as well. Again, 2 to 4, play with other children. Now, age 4, they cooperate and share. Not always. Guys, we've all seen 4-year-olds not be able to share. But and 6, they start identifying themselves as groups. 2, 3, 4, kids will play with anybody. They don't really care. And after this, they start listening to, and society starts telling them who are the in-group, the out-group, who are good people to play with. Maybe even racial issues are developed in this age where parents are not racially diverse in their thinking, and so their communication is as such that I'm not going to play with him because he's white, or I'm not going to play with her because she's black. That starts to occur in this age as early as that. It's really sad that even occurs at all. But and these are subtle things. These aren't mom or dad saying don't play with them because they are. These are just subtle things that the kids pick up on. So here are the different parenting styles that are part of this. Authoritative, reasonable demands. Again, this is kind of idealistic. Sometimes this can occur, and depending on the environment, depending on what's going on in the household, nature, nurture. If the child has some learning disabilities, might be a little more difficult. But authoritative is when the child has reasonable demands, excessive limits. They feel very connected, and their point of view is listened to, not followed, but listened to. Okay, that's a big difference. Or authoritative is parents place high conformity and obedience, often rigid. This is another one that kind of it's kind of okay. It really are parents as they grow up. Maybe it has to do with the parents' personality styles. I think you'll find sometimes that people that have a military background, which many of you may have, might tend to parent this way because this is how things work really well for you when you were in the service, okay, or are in the service, or your parents are in the service. This permissive style is kind of what we would call the laissez-faire, which is kind of like do what you want to do kind of stuff. And there's you rarely get punished. This is a house that people want to go to that mom or dad are never around, or in high school, this is when where the parties occur many times because mom or dad are down there drinking with all the high school students. That's kind of this. Mom or dad want to be the friend, the partner. Are afraid to do something against their child because their child may not like them. There are times when my children didn't like me, but I'm confident they always loved me, and that's a big difference. So this is the kind of person that really wants their child to like them. They want to be their best friend. And this is someone generally that is abusive. Drugs come into this play where they're just uninvolved. They're just, hey, whatever, do what you want to do. There's no one checking on them. They call it about. Sometimes these people think that's really cool that someone can come in whenever they want at 1 o'clock in the morning when they're, a sophomore in high school, when they have a curfew at 10, like on a weekend or something. I don't know what your curfews are today, but that's about normal for me when I was growing up. I think it's cool. People can just come and go as they want to, but this carries a lot of bad baggage with it. Okay, a lot of it. Okay, so this is the style of a parent. And I don't think anybody tries to be this way. It usually comes that way as they develop their styles, or as they have their own personal issues that are really coming in the way of them being a parent. Okay, so again, kind of know these styles a little bit. I know there'll be some questions on these styles as well on your quizzes and stuff going forward. So with those styles, here's the temperament of the child. Okay. Sometimes they work together where certain styles lead to a better temperament. Sometimes that would be nurture. The nature aspect of it though is sometimes children, because of their DNA, have just a more difficult temperament. Okay, and that usually ties into mom or dad may have more difficult temperament, and the two of those will butt heads, especially when they get into high school, and so that could be a problem. acknowledging it, and I'll say this, I think I don't know if I've said it again or not, or before or not, but when children are born, there's no instruction manual. There's nothing that says do this, do that, do this, do that. There certainly are people out there that have ideas, but every child is unique. Every child is different. Every child has its own story. And so parents, in most of the cases, I'm saying the great majority of cases, are trying really hard to do the right thing. But sometimes it just butt heads because the DNA is so similar or different, one could be one or the other, that these situations start coming up. Their style is very uninvolved, and they have very difficult temperament. And the child is a clinger and really wants to be bonded, but is not getting it from the parent, and has difficult temperament as well. So there's yelling and screaming in that kind of household. That's a lot about that. But these are three temperaments that can lead to adolescence. Let me see, did I miss one? Oh, I guess that's just the title. Okay, so these are puberty taking place. These are the different phases of that. Most of you have maybe gone over this in different things that occur. These can be more than just physical development, emotional development. For example, if you are a early developing boy or girl, there were some major problems. I know I can share personal experiences, but I will share those. When I was in ninth grade, I went to a high school, and that was a time when we had open showers. I'd never been that way before. Ninth grade, most of the students had reached puberty. Some hadn't, and some of them were made fun of and really embarrassed because they hadn't, and the ones that had were, they had full hair in their chest, and of course everywhere else too, and they were like the bullies and the macho-ness of the thing. And girls, I think it's really a struggle for girls when they develop their breasts early, because little guys become these little creeps, I guess. And the girls, if nothing happens, they still feel very self-conscious about it. And so, the natural process is hard enough, but when you develop before or after others, that can be a real issue. Okay, so this is the process. But not too much more into that there. Maybe a lot deeper than that. But so the brain development. This is the frontal lobe. Okay, the frontal lobe doesn't develop in the early 20s. The frontal lobe is where your decisions are made. So this is where the ego sits there with the id and the superego, and it's got these high risk things, low risk things firing back at it, and some of us make the decision. Again, it's parents going, "Why did you do that?" And you say, "I don't know," and they say, "Oh, come on, I know you know. Tell me," and you get punished for not telling them. Sometimes parents need to just understand that they don't know, and it only seemed like the thing to do at the time. And from an adult, that sounds really dumb because our frontal lobe has developed, and we developed this idea of proper judgment and impulse control and planning. But someone who's 16 that hasn't developed, now that's not an excuse to go out and do stupid things, okay? But it just says from a parent perspective, this hasn't developed yet. And so they make a lot of decisions. Now there are some adults that this hasn't developed. Okay, so it's not the same in everybody. And sometimes it develops real early, and some people are real conscious of things real early, maybe in their early teens. Okay, so anyway, frontal lobe is a big part of how. This is your motor cortex, so it's right connected to it. This is where all your motor development is occurring. Your hearing is back in here. This is where a lot of your emotions are, your amygdala, those things we've talked about back in here. Okay, so this whole thing kind of working together and firing off all different ways. But your frontal lobe doesn't develop yet. So cognitive development, I spent too much time on this, but it's to reason logically. And so this is where algebra becomes to make sense. You can start doing more critical thinking. You can get to concepts like cognitive dissonance, and you can work through them rather than just picking one or the other. This is a different empathy of kind of increases in adolescence, but it's part of how to solve different problems, how to appreciate another person's viewpoint. There are many adults that don't have that ability to appreciate other person's input or viewpoints. We just think I'm right, you're wrong, and that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes it's the case, but not necessarily. Um, Psychosocial development, moving along a little bit. Who am I? These are some of the questions we ask in adolescence. And this is where parents, rewarding child have been just with better grades. So children who are more solid in this have better parent-child relationships. Now this could be a single parent or could be two parents. It doesn't have to be just, the mom and dad traditional, old white wicked pen, white wicker fence around the house with, suburban environment. Uh, Certainly that occurs, and but it could just be a nice relationship. I've run into a lot of single parent relationships where the relationship is just incredibly positive, and so these kind of things tend to be the situation. Okay, this is the attachment. This is the bonding. This is a lot of the stuff that's going on where you can come home and ask your parent, "Who am I?" Not necessarily verbatim, but those kind of things, and you start asking questions that well, who was my grandfather, and what did they do, and how were they developed, and those kind of questions start to develop who you are. Okay. Um, anyway, so that's this adolescent stage, and then adulthood. So adulthood is 18 to 20. This is when you're emerging adulthood. This is when when you start you start making decisions on your own. Your frontal lobe is developed or developing, almost completed, but looking at different stuff. Many times people move out during these stages. They move into higher level education, or they move into jobs that are more challenging, or they create their own jobs, or those types of things. But it becomes more of a challenging time rather out of high school and going forward to about the mid-20s. And then you start getting into the physical development that's occurring. When you start getting middle adulthood, this is why a lot of great athletes and even dancers or people like that tend to do real well, like ice skaters or gymnastics. Of course, a lot of those body types and whatever, but you don't see many 45-year-old ice skaters in the Olympics. Generally, it's something that they become coaches or whatever, and they can do some of the stuff. The coaches can still do some of the stuff, but there's just a loss of your physical activity, and there's nothing you can do about it, really. It just happens. Menopause occurs, men tend to gain weight, our metabolic rate starts to decrease, a metabolic rate starts to decrease, a metabolic rate, starts to decrease, and so what happens is we can eat 2,000 calories as a 18-year-old, and we'll probably be skinny. Eat 2,000 calories as a 50-year-old, we will be overweight. Okay, and so that's kind of how it happens because you just don't burn as many calories. Okay, so all this stuff is going on. So I'm 65, so I've noticed some of these things that have occurred. Very much so. I mean, this vision decline, yeah, absolutely. I didn't wear glasses till I was 40, and all of a sudden I needed glasses. Anyway, all this stuff kind of occurs. It's going to happen, and get ready for it. And sometimes it's bad. Some birthdays that you have that cross over the decades become really traumatic. For me, turning 40 was a lot. 50 was as well. My mom died at 49, so when I became 49, that became kind of a big thing, kind of a worry about mortality at that point. That was, of course, a while ago, so I guess I'm still kicking, So anyway, these are the kind of things to look at, and these are going to happen. So kind of prepare that they're going to happen, and but we do get depressed when they do happen. It's just a part of what occurs. And their cognitive development tends to fall over the years, but we do have these two things, crystallized and fluid intelligence. I think we talked about this with intelligence, is that really crystallized is like fixed, and fluid can be like growth mindsets. Okay, but it's similar, not exactly the same, but it's kind of that idea of being able to grow through information processing versus just having data. This is about data. Okay, and it can improve. Okay. And so let me see here. Psychosocial, as we get older, we tend to, deal with things that are we too tied to our jobs? Are we not tied enough to our jobs? Do we have friends outside our jobs? So job satisfaction, we're in a place that treats us well. Okay, Those all become big things going on. Relationships, a stable marriage. I mean, that's such a difficult thing. I mean, I've been married for 45 years, and let me tell you, and my wife would agree as well. This is not, I'm not telling on her. Some of those years were tough, and I can understand why people say, this is not working. And a lot of people do that. And a lot of people have to do that because of different abusive, physical and emotional abusive relationships. So I'm not saying that people are not married or not or have on a second marriage are not stable people, but if you're able to, and lucky enough to have that stable marriage, it helps certainly in the kids thing. People that stay together for their children, the kids know. One of the questions on our final is when a divorce occurs, what's the impact on everybody in the family? A lot of it is that when a divorce does occur, it depends on how old the child is, where the child is in their psychosocial development, where the child is in their 40 development, their PSY development, and probably more importantly, their Erickson development. Where are they in there? And that affects their bonding, their relationship, and going forward. Every child doesn't react the same to the divorce that occurs at one time. One might be 7 years old, one might be 12, and the other one might be 18. 3 kids in the family. Every one would have a very different reaction to it. So anyway, that's part of that final project. I think it's pretty interesting, especially with all the divorces I've had in my family. So anyway, so that's part of that stuff there. Last one. So this is one of our assignments too, or one of our possible ones in the final assignment is Kubler-Ross developed these denials, these stages of grief. She actually originally developed them for going into, like, if we find out we're going to die. She developed them for like a pre-death thing. Okay, people go through these stages there, and I think they still do. It's not, but also what she found is that as she was starting doing more research, this is from 1969, back in about 1990s and early 2000s, she started doing research on people who, after people have died in their family. And she realized that these are kind of the same steps people go through. Now, they're not always in the same order, they're not always at the same speed, sometimes they're skipped over, but just, as I said, there's no norm. There's no, you have to do this to go to this, to this, to this. Some may go from denial to depression to acceptance and never go through these two. Other people may be stuck in the anger for a long time. Why is God doing this to me? That kind of stuff. You're taking away all my loved ones. And all of them are understandable. And psychotherapists and psychologists deal with these things a lot. So one of the projects is, the project idea is to look at different cultures. Could be cultures within the U.S. Could be whether it's Southern, Northeast, Western, Midwest. Could be racial. It could be ethnic. It could be just different country cultures. I say country cultures, or it could be cultures that like continental Africa, South America, Europe, North America, Asia. Do they have different cultures in there? Some of these are somewhat consistent, but I think they change in how they go about doing that. So anyway, that's it with chapter 9. To me, this stuff is so exciting. I could write talk for hours on it, but I apologize if I ramble a little bit too much. But it's just so exciting. I get my brain pops with little examples, and so I want to share them because I know they help some of you, and others are probably going, "Oh, get over it. Okay, move on." Anyway, I think we're fine with number 9. And if you have any questions, email me. Get a hold of me on Remind, or we can set up a Zoom and we can talk through the process, especially if you're starting to think about your final project. 2 of those topics are right in here, going forward, possible topics. Anyway, thanks for listening, and we will talk to you later.